بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So today this is the 54th lesson in our series on the book Al-Uboodiyyah of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. In the previous few lessons we've been discussing about some terminology, some words, in particular the word al-fana. Al-fana means to perish, to expire, and sometimes people can use terms or words and they can place meanings into these words and terms which are false, and which can lead to misguidance, or they can have true meanings and they can have false meanings. And so depending on which belief or which idea you come with when you approach this word or these similar types of words, then you can either have true meanings or false meanings. And so one of those words that we've been looking at and we've been discussing is the word al-fana, which literally means to perish or to expire. And we said that there are three meanings which can be meant. The first is fana'ul qusud, which is basically where every desire, every motivation that you have, then it perishes, no longer exists, and the only desire which remains is the desire to worship Allah, to please Allah, to obey Allah, to do what is wajib, to do what is mustahab. Right? So this is a correct and true meaning. The second meaning is fana'u shuhud, which is where it starts off as something good. At the starting point is something good. For example, you do not see anything in existence except the worship of Allah. So essentially you turn away from all created things, right? Created things don't really exist, and you just devote yourself just to worship Allah. And so although at the starting point this seems like something good, if you are not someone who is deeply rooted in knowledge and has sound intellect, like many of the great scholars had, like Uboodiyyah bin Iyaad, Al-Junayd and others, then you are going to eventually fall into misguidance. That's the second type. And the third type that we started discussing in the previous lesson is what's called fana'ul wujud, right? Which is basically you see that nothing exists except there's only the creator and the created merged into one, right? Nothing exists separately or independently. Everything is just one thing as a whole, and it is Allah. It is the creator and the created at the same time, right? So obviously this is the view of the extreme Sufis, the people of Wahdatul Wujud. And so the reason why all of this is important is because we are in the context of discussing Tawheed, the meaning of At-Tawheed, and a person worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal. And obviously this also entails what's in the heart of love and fear and hope and reliance and all of these things. And what Ibn Taymiyyah is pointing out here is showing the danger where if you do not start off on the right foundations, you're going to be led to tremendous misguidance. And so the whole discussion started off really about, distinguishing between the qadr of Allah, what Allah decrees and wills to happen, and the shara' of Allah, which is the legislation. Right? We have to distinguish between these two things. Whatever Allah decrees, right, is other than what He legislates. Right? So when someone sins or steals or fornicates, Allah has allowed that to happen by way of His decree, al-qadr. This is al-qadr. But in His legislation, He has prohibited that, and He's displeased with that. Right? So the mistake that's being made is that if you treat all of that to be one and the same, which would mean that whatever Allah wills, He's automatically pleased with it. Right? Someone sins, Allah's pleased with that because it's from His decree, and He only decrees what He's pleased with. Right? So they've merged the two together. And then from this point, you are then led to tremendous misguidance. All right, that's the wider discussion that we are having, in the recent lessons. So within that context, one example that Ibn Taymiyyah is giving of how this misguidance can enter is through this notion or the idea of al-fana, right? And obviously we've seen. You can apply three different meanings to it. One, which is the truth. The second, which is it starts off as something good, but its end result is misguidance for most people. And the third one is outright disbelief. Outright disbelief. So here in today's lesson, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is going to be again contrasting between true and false meanings, true and false understandings. Right, so he says, وَأَمَّا النَّوْعُ الثَّالِث, as for the third type, وَهُوَ الْفَنَاءُ فِي الْمَوْجُودِ فَهُوَ تَحْقِيقُ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ وَمَعْرِفَتِهِمْ وَتَوْحِيدِهِمْ وَكَالْقَرَامِطَ وَأَمْثَالِهِمْ. So he says the third type, which we discussed in the previous lesson, it is al-fana, the perishing which relates to existence. So this means that you no longer see this as a separate entity, and that as a separate entity, and you as a separate entity, all separate entities, separate and distinct from the Creator, right? You see, all of that disappears. All of that disappears, and everything is just one inseparable whole, right? Ibn Taymiyyah says, this really is the true and real doctrine of the people of Fir'aun. This is essentially what Fir'aun and his people were upon, or it is what their beliefs necessitate, right? And this is the limits of their knowledge, the limits of their tawheed, and whoever followed them in this way, like certain, sects like the Qaramita and people like that. So then he says, in contrast to this, وهذا النوع الذي عليه أتباع الأنبياء هو الفناء المحمود. He says, in contrast to this, the fana, which is the other type, which the followers of the prophets are upon, this is the praiseworthy type of al-fana, right? Which we discussed earlier, the first type. And these people are the ones whom Allah has actually praised. They're the ones who are praised. Right? They are الذي يكون صاحبه به ممن أثنى الله عليهم من أوليائه المتقين. Such people are from those whom Allah has praised. They are from His pious friends. They are from the successful ones, and they are the ones who will be victorious. His soldiers who will be victorious. And when the sheikhs and the righteous people, when they speak with this type of speech, when they say, I do not see except Allah. Remember at the end of the last lesson we said at the end of the last lesson, the reason why many Sufis got confused later on is because when some of the earlier righteous, pious scholars from the Salaf, when they made statements like, I do not see except Allah. What do they mean by this? They mean, I do not see that I should please except Allah. I do not see that I should desire except Allah. I do not see except that I should love Allah. That's what they mean, right? I do not see except Allah. That's basically what they mean with the first understanding. So when the later Sufis came, and then they heard like maybe Al-Fudail or Al-Junaid or many of the other righteous people, when they hear statements like this from them, they interpret to mean upon their deviant doctrine, right? So they say, see, Al-Fudail said he does not see except Allah. This means everything he's looking at is Allah. This is a proof of our doctrine, right? And this is how they were misled, because they misunderstood the statements of the earlier scholars, the earlier righteous people from the Tabi'een, who had a correct and sound understanding of Tawheed, of Al-Qadr, of Al-Shara'. They made all these distinctions which these other people were not making. So, as Ibn Taymiyyah says, وَلَيْسَ مُرَادْ الْمَشَايِخ وَالصَّالِحِينَ بِهَذَا الْقَوْلِ أَنَّ الَّذِي أَرَاهُ بِعَيْنِي مِنَ الْمَخْلُوقَاتِ هُوَ رَبُّ الْأَرْضِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ. Right? So those scholars, they didn't mean by this statement that whatever I am seeing with the vision of my eyes is Allah. That's not what they meant. The Shaykh says, no one says this except the one who is extremely misguided and corrupt. Either the corruption of the intellect, his intellect is corrupt to begin with, or he just happens to have a corrupt belief, right? And such people, فَهُوَ مُتَرَدِّدٌ بَيْنَ الْجُنُونِ وَالْإِلْحَادِ. And these types of people, they are basically reverting back and forward between either madness or atheism. Madness or atheism, right? Such people who speak with the likes of this speech. So then Ibn Taymiyyah says, rahimahullah, وَكُلُّ الْمَشَايِخ الَّذِينَ يُقْتَدَى بِهِمْ فِي الدِّينِ مُتَّفِقُونَ عَلَى مَا اتَّفَقَ عَلَيْهِ سَلَفُ الْأُمَّةِ وَأَئِمَّتُهَا مِنْ أَنَّ الْخَالِقَ سُبْحَانَهُ مُبَايِنٌ لِلْمَخْلُوقَاتِ وليس في مخلوقاته شيء من ذاته ولا في ذاته شيء من مخلوقاته وأنه يجب إفراد القديم عن الحادث وتمييز الخالق عن المخلوق وهذا في كلامهم أكثر من أن يمكن ذكره هنا. So he says here, all of the mashayikh, meaning all of the scholars, the righteous people who are worthy to be followed in religion, right? So the scholars amongst the tabi'een and so on, they are all agreed, what the Salaf were agreed upon, that the Creator, subhanahu, is distinct from His creation, from His creatures. He's distinct. And there is nothing of His essence that enters into His creation. And there's nothing in His essence of the creation. Right? There's no merging, mixing, anything like that at all. They're completely separate and distinct. And that it is obligatory to separate or to single out He who is eternal from that which is new and originated. And that is, it is necessary to separate the Creator from the created. Right? And this, when you go back to these scholars, the early scholars, you can see that's very, very clear and apparent in their statements. Right? Ibn Taymiyyah is mentioning this as a refutation of those later Sufis who were claiming, see Al-Junaid, see Al-Fudail and those righteous, people, they believe what we believe. No, they didn't say that. Rather, they said the opposite. Because in their statements, you can see clearly when they were refuting the Jahmiyyah and people like that, they were saying Allah is above His throne. He is distinct and separate from His creation. He does not enter into His creation. The creation does not enter into Him. Right? All of these statements are very many and very numerous from the Salaf. And so Shaykh al-Fawzan, he comments upon what we've mentioned here, and he says that the people of the truth, Ahlul Sunnah, their belief is that Allah does not mix with His creation, does not merge with His creation, nor does the creation merge with Him. Rather, Allah is distinct from His creation. He is established upon His throne, above His creation, And this is a refutation of the Hululiyyah, who believe Allah, indwells in His creation, or the Ittihadiyyah, who believe Allah becomes one with certain beings, with certain entities, like the Christians believe that Allah became one with Jesus. This is Ittihad, right? This is false. All of this is false. So this is a refutation of those people, and this is something that was said by all of the righteous scholars who followed the Salaf. However, he says those scholars also, alongside making this clear, they also spoke about what happens to the hearts. وهم قد تكلموا على ما يعرض للقلوب من الأمراض والشبهات وأن بعض الناس قد يشهد وجود المخلوقات فيظنه خالق الأرض والسماوات لعدم التمييز والفرقان في قلبه بمنزلة من رأى شعاع الشمس فظن أن ذلك هو الشمس التي في السماء. So then he says that likewise these same scholars who clarified these things, they also spoke of the fact that the hearts can sometimes, there can be diseases and doubts which come to the hearts, right? Meaning the hearts which are not grounded in knowledge, that sometimes certain diseases of the heart and doubts can come to the heart. And some people, like the extreme Sufis, they may look around and what they see of the creation and the creatures, they think that is the very same thing as the creator of the heavens and the earth. Why? Because they're not able to make this distinction in their hearts between what is created and what is the creator. Right? And Ibn Taymiyyah gives an example. He says, like for example, you see the sun and you see the rays of the sun. Right? The rays of the sun. So this person thinks that the rays of the sun is actually the sun, when that's not the case. Right? The sun and its rays are separate. The rays are something else and the sun is something else. So these people, this is how they view the creation, right? They view the creation of Allah as if there is Allah and the creation is basically something that emanates from Him. Just like the rays of light emanate from the sun. And they think that all of this is one and the same thing. This is false. This is not true. So there are some people among the Sufis, this is how they view the creation, right? They look at the creation and they see, for example, they say, look at the beauty of this ocean. This beauty is the beauty of Allah manifesting. It is Allah. It is this is how they see it. Or they might see, for example, like say the force or the power or the for example, let's say you have a tsunami or a tornado or something, right, where there is power and strength and force and destruction, right? So they say this is a manifestation of Allah. It is Allah and His power, right? Meaning that what we are witnessing is Allah Himself, like in the same way that you have the sun and then you have the rays of the sun, right? This is the general, one of the notions that's with the Sufis. And this is false. This is not true. They are not able to make these distinctions. So the point being here, what Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is pointing out is how do we in all of this confusion, how do we have the correct understanding, right? What is it that will remove such people from their misguidance? What is the correct way to understand all things? And so in addressing this, he says وَهُمْ قَدْ يَتَكَلَّمُونَ فِي الْفَرْقِ وَالْجَمْعِ ويدخل في ذلك من العبارات الملفتة نظير ما دخل في الفناء. So he says that in order to clarify all of this confusion that can arise when people have these wrong understandings or they have these mistakes, then these scholars, they speak of separation and uniting, right? Separating and uniting. Al-farq wal-jam'. What does this mean? He'll explain this. Right? We speak of separating and uniting. Right? So, in other words, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he is going to explain what is the solution to this whole problem, right, that the Sufis fell into. How do we, or how did the scholars, how do you make the very important distinctions in this topic? And also, what do you separate and what do you bring together? What are the things that you have to separate? What are the things you have to bring together in order to have a correct understanding of this entire subject matter? So he continues, he says, in explaining this, he says, فَإِنَّ الْعَبْدِ إِذَا شَهِدَ التَّفْرِقَ وَالْكَثْرَ فِي الْمَخْلُوقَاتِ يَبْقَى قَلْبُهُ مُتَعَلِّقًا بِهَا متشتتا ناظرا إليها متعلقا بها إما محبة وإما خوفا وإما رجاء. Right, so basically let's start off. We're gonna start off with a number of different people. So you start off by looking at what's around you in the creation, right? So you see there's a wife and there's children and there's a house and there's a car and there's, you know, pleasures of the food, of drink, and there's, you know, like all of these are different things in the creation that surround you, right? So you look at all of these things separately, and what you find is your heart obviously is turns to them, becomes attached to them, and you know, not only things that you like and you desire, but also things that you might fear as well, right? So you see there's a lion here, and there's a snake here, and there's a robber here, and there's a murderer here, and there's, you know, there's even from the natural phenomena, you know, there's a storm here, right? So basically there are things around you towards which your heart shows either love, or it shows fear, or it shows hope, right? So here in this situation, your heart is attached to so many different things. You know, your heart is here, then it's there, then it's there, then it's there, and it's showing love here and hope here and fear there. And like, in other words, from this point, starting from this point, your heart is like separated and, you know, all over the place, right? So from this point, when you turn from this, right? So this is what we call al-farq, right? Your heart is separated. When you turn from this and you go towards uniting your heart, and you do so by way of the tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So how do you bring your heart together? It is upon the tawheed of Allah and worshipping Him alone, right? So when your heart and the love, fear and hope, which ordinarily would be in this direction, that direction, that direction, to this thing, to that thing, to that thing, to this thing, to that person, to that, you know, you bring, that heart comes together and it turns its love, fear and hope and directs it to Allah, and it seeks aid from Allah. Then, this is where we start basically coming to like the tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. And now when a person does this, he's obviously turned away from all of those created things, and he's directed his heart only to Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So what we are pointing to here is we are going back to the second type of fana, right? You understand? The second type of fana, where you just forget everything and you are engrossed only with worshipping Allah, and as if other things don't really exist. There's just you and your worship and your love of Allah, your fear of Allah, your hope in Allah, and that's all that's kind of really there, right? So here Ibn Taymiyyah is pointing to the second type of al-fana that we were looking at earlier on, right? Okay, so what we are saying here is that in this situation, this person here, what is he doing? Let's call this person Abdullah, right? This is Abdullah now. And his experience in life is all these things, they put me to trial, my heart is scattered everywhere, I'm loving this thing, fearing that thing, hoping in that thing, I'm scattered everywhere. Why don't I just turn away from all of this and let me just turn to Allah and forget all of these things, and I'm just going to concentrate and focus only on worshipping Allah, and that's all I'm going to do, right? So as you can see, this thing here is like the second type of al-fana, and this is what a person might enter into. What Ibn Taymiyyah is doing, he is showing the difference between this person here and what he's doing, and between another person who is on the right way and doing the right thing, right? This person, what he's doing here, right, is starting off from a position that's going to lead him to misguidance, unless he is from those highly intelligent, deeply rooted, people, right? Like the early, like Al-Fudail, Al-Junayd, and other from the righteous scholarly, scholars. He's contrasting between this situation here, right? Remember this situation, we spoke about it in previous lessons, where if this is your approach, right, where you think, you know what, I'm going to close off from the entire world, right? I'm not going to look at anything. I want to keep away from it. Just worship Allah, just me, my feelings of love, fear, hope, tawakkul, whatever, and it's just me and Allah. I see nothing. I'm not interested in the world. These are the types of people who react emotionally, right? These are the types of people who, they'll hear the verse of the Quran, praying in the prayer, they'll hear a verse of the Quran which strikes them, and they'll, fall down unconscious, right? And that's only because they are so detached from real life, from the real world, and from experience in the real world, right? As a result of which they are combining the knowledge of the Quran with real events, with real experiences, as a result of which they have certainty, they have yaqeen, right? So when they hear the same ayat of Allah, right, it gives them even further yaqeen. They're not going to just drop down unconscious because they can't mentally process what they've heard. Do you understand? That's the difference, right? And so these people here who become unconscious and faint and burst into tears and whatever, this is not a sign of being firmly grounded in knowledge and piety and certainty. This is basically a weakness. This is a weakness. This was not found amongst the companions. It was found in people who came afterwards, who were deficient, right? So what Ibn Taymiyyah is doing here is he's given this example, first of all, of where someone might think, you know what, there's so many temptations in life, there's so many pleasures and lusts and things which take you away and distract you from Allah. So let me just go away from all of that and let my heart just be united and occupied in just worshipping Allah, right? And he'll do that, right? And he'll neglect the world and so on and so forth, right? So this is the type of person which is, the second type of al-fana, right? Now he's contrasting what is the right way, what is the correct way that we the way that we do it. And he says, however, after this, ولكن بعد ذلك الفرق الثاني وهو أن يشهد أن المخلوقات قائمة بالله مدبرة بأمره ويشهد كثرتها معدومة بوحدانية الله سبحانه وتعالى وأنه سبحانه رب المصنوعات وإلهها وخالقها ومالكها، فيكون مع اجتماع قلبه على الله إخلاصا له ومحبة وخوفا ورجاء واستئانة وتوكلا على الله وموالاة فيه ومعاداة فيه وأمثال ذلك، ناظرا إلى الفرق بين الخالق والمخلوق مميزا بين هذا وهذا، يشهد تفرق المخلوقات وكثرتها مع شهادته أن الله رب كل شيء ومليكه وخالقه وأنه هو الله لا إله إلا هو. So basically this whole passage, what he's saying here is, right, so if you remember this person over here, how does he start off? He starts off looking at everything and he doesn't like the temptation, and he doesn't like that his heart is being attached to things. So he says, right, I'm going to flee from all of this and I'm going to, just devote myself to Allah, and I'm not interested in any of this. Right? He starts off from that point. So really, he's kind of preventing himself from understanding what is in Allah's creation of wisdoms and lessons and admonitions, and tying causes to their effects and relating all of that knowledge to Allah's names and attributes, like he's missing all of that. Right? Which means that this is why such people are in a position where they will be led to misguidance, because they will start, they will not be able to make the important distinctions that are made with knowledge and with certainty, right? So here in this person, the other person, what do we do here? Ibn Taymiyyah is saying that we look at the creation of Allah, we look at the things around us, all these things, everything, whatever Allah created, the sun, the moon, the stars, the wind, the rain, the individual, like people, the animals, our parents, the spouses, like everything you can imagine that you experience and you encounter. You look at all of these things, and how do you see them? You see them that these affairs exist through Allah, right? Allah is their creator. That's how and why they exist. Allah is their regulator. He controls them. And he sees that they are all different things out there, right? They're all different things. The sun is different to the moon, is different to the rain, different to the stars. They all have their own specific functions. They all have their own specific properties, and they do certain things. They are all brought into existence by Allah Azza wa Jal. And Allah is the Rabb. He is the Lord of all of them. He is the deity of all of them. He is the creator of all of them, the owner of all of them. Right. So what's happening here is, when he views all of these separate individual things in Allah's creation through the notion and the belief of Allah being their creator, maker, and so on and so forth, right? This is like another way of uniting his heart to Allah, right? Unlike that person over there is basically trying to flee from everything, right? This person is using these things as evidence and as a way to to understand that Allah alone is one, and to fear Allah, and to hope in Allah, and to love Allah, and to respond to Allah, to have reliance upon Allah, to love for His sake, to hate for His sake, right? And observing the clear distinction between the creator and the created. See that? So when he looks at these things, he can see the sun, the moon, the stars, the rain, everything. These are all created things. They are subjected to laws, right? They are other than Allah. And then he learns the relationship between all things. And this supports and strengthens Tawheed, and the fact that there is a Rabb and there is a Marboob, right? There is a Khaliq and there is a Makhluq, right? That there is a creator and the created, a Lord, and those under his dominion. So therefore, as Ibn Taymiyyah says, he basically distinguishes between this and between that, right? He distinguishes between the creator and the created, and this brings out the meaning of La ilaha illallah, right? So basically he is observing here the meaning of La ilaha illallah. He's observing the Tawheed of Allah, that Allah is distinct and separate from His creation, right? So the point being, can you see in these two different scenarios where you have this person here, which is what happened to the Sufis, right? The Sufis wanting to flee the temptations of the world and have nothing to do with the world. They lost a lot of knowledge and insight into Allah's creation, by which they lacked obviously depth of knowledge and also certainty, right? And that's why among these people in general, you'll hear stories of this person was so pious, all he heard was Alif Lam Mim, and he fell to the ground unconscious. This is his piety. No, this is not a sign of piety. This is a sign of weakness. This is a sign of deficiency, right? And you never saw this amongst the companions. So what we are seeing here is what is the asal, what is the basis and the foundation from which you start off from. And if you don't start off from the right foundation from the beginning, then you are going to be led to misguidance. And that's why this was the asl, this was the foundation of the prophets, of the companions, of the salaf. And from this angle, what they are witnessing is the tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. Everything that they do, they are constantly seeing the distinction between the creator and the created. Right? That's there prominently in everything that they do, which obviously brings out the meaning of tawheed. So Ibn Taymiyyah says, he says, well, Shaykh al-Fawzan comments. Let's go through the commentary of Shaykh al-Fawzan first. He basically comments on this passage, and he says that a person knows that the creator is one, whilst the creations are many. The creatures are many, but the creator is one, right? And no one is a creator alongside Allah. No one is able to bring anything, from non-existence to existence, except Allah Azza wa Jal. He is the Al-Khallaq, the Khaliq, the creator. He is Al-Wahid Al-Qahhar, the one, the compeller. And, we must know this, and we must know that the creator is one, but the creatures are very, very many. They are all created by Allah, by His power, by His will, by His, irada. And this obviously is a refutation of the people of Wahdatul Wujud and people like that. So the person who operates like this, he is the one who is muwahhid. He is the true monotheist. This is true monotheism. This is what monotheism means, right? It's not what like there's many other different interpretations which are given of the kalima la ilaha illallah, which are false, right? I'll just mention some of them very briefly. The first one that the idea that everything is Allah and Allah is everything, there's only one existence. This is the meaning of tawheed. This is false, right? So la ilaha illallah, meaning la wujud illallah. There is no existence except that of Allah. This is false. This is kufr. Right? This is kufr. This is one interpretation. Another interpretation would be La ilaha illallah, La fa'ila illallah, La fa'ila illallah. There is no one who acts except Allah. Right? What they mean by this is that no one has any power of his own. No one really does his own actions. Rather, it's simply Allah, the one who is doing the actions through your physical body. Allah is the one who's acting, right? And they deny that we have, our choice and ability and power that Allah has given to us. This would mean when a thief steals, it is Allah who's doing that action, right? When, and all the other things, obviously, this is false. We say Allah is the creator of the action. He created the action, and the person is the doer of the action. Allah creates the action because He created you. He created your limbs, He created your mind, your heart and everything, and you use that to do the action yourself. So Allah created you and your action, but you are the doer of the action, not Allah. Allah's not doing your action. Do you understand? When the mushrik is prostrating to an idol, it's the mushrik that's doing that. Do you understand? And Allah is the one who's creating the action. Allah is not doing that action. This is another interpretation of the meaning of La ilaha illallah. This is the tawheed of the Jabariyah. This is false. This is not true. Right? So can you see how the Muslims, because they deviated, they started altering the meaning of tawheed. Right? So the tawheed that the messengers came with, the prophets and messengers, to single out Allah in worship. Allah is the Lord, the Creator, separate and distinct from His creation, not in His creation is not in Him. He is worthy of being worshipped alone. This is the meaning of La ilaha illallah. Right? But because of deviations, there are to be found amongst the Muslims understandings of Tawheed, understandings of this simple kalima La ilaha illallah, which are totally false. They are outright disbelief. Right? So the point being that this shows that the true meaning of a muwahhid, he distinguishes between the creator and the created. And there's no confusion in his heart or in his mind about what he's worshipping, right? This doesn't happen to him, unlike what happened to the Sufis, who became highly confused in these types of issues. So the Shaykh goes on to say that everything is created by Allah Azza wa Jal, and no one is a creator alongside Allah. So Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he then says, وَهَذَا هذا هو الشهود الصحيح المستقيم, right? So meaning that this is the right type of, like when you observe and witness, this is the correct type of observation. وذلك واجب في علم القلب وشهادته وذكره ومعرفته في حال القلب وعبادته وقصده وإرادته ومحبته وموالاته وطاعته. Right, so meaning that this is what is obligatory upon the heart, to know these things and to make these distinctions, right? And then what follows on from that, from worshipping Allah, desiring Allah, loving Allah, being loyal to Allah, obeying Allah. This is how we establish وَذَلِكَ تَحْقِيقُ شَهَادَةِ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. This is putting into practice or actualizing the testimony that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah. Right? So only through this do you negate the uluhiyyah, the right of worship, from everything which is besides Allah, and you affirm it only for Allah, right? For Allah who is the truth, right? So he negates the uluhiyyah, the right to worship, from every created thing, and he affirms it only for the Lord of the worlds, the Lord of the earth, the Lord of the heavens. And this means that his heart becomes united for Allah, and and thereby he's able to separate between Allah and his creation, right? He's able to separate between Allah and his creation, and he knows that his love and his desire, so on and so forth, that he knows where it goes, right, as it relates to the creation and to the created. So in other words, what Ibn Taymiyyah is saying here, that we are basically able, by starting off from the right foundations, we are able to make all of these important distinctions, and we are not going to become confused in our knowledge nor in our worship, and we know exactly what we are loving, what we are hoping in, what we are fearing, what we are showing loyalty to, right? All of these important distinctions are very clear in our hearts and in our minds, and there is no confusion therein, unlike what you found with the Sufis of tremendous confusion in these types of issues. So what we'll do here inshallah is so really what he's leading to is the completion of the meaning of Tawheed. And I guess what we'll do, we'll stop at this point. I just want to round this discussion off, because this discussion that Ibn Taymiyyah is mentioning here, I met with somebody the other day, 2 days ago, who, and to show the danger of this way of thinking, and to show that that there are people today from the non-Muslims who are promoting the very same doctrine that you see that's being outlined here. So, I spoke to a person who was a Muslim, and he left Islam, and so I sat with him for a few hours to discuss what's going through his mind. And basically he says that everything is just spirituality and everything is just energy, right? And there's the only thing which exists is the creator and the created. That's all there is in existence, right? And there's I mean, to cut a long story short, basically, the things which he did was, first of all, what he's calling to is just pure atheism, right? You can't have the creator and created merged into one. There's no such thing, right? This is just pure atheism, right? A creator is a creator. He's eternal, uncreated, everlasting, without beginning, without end, right? And whatever is besides him is created by definition. By definition, you can't now come and say the creator and the created are one and the same thing. This is just a contradiction in concept. You can't even have that, right? So that's the first thing. And secondly, he said that everything is connected and it's all energy. Everything is all connected and it's all energy. We are all energy, and you're connected to me and I'm connected to you and this is connected to this and that, And this is just nonsense, because entities are distinct and separate. This is an entity distinct and separate from that key there, It has its own essence. It is, qa'imun bi nafsihi. It's like an entity. It's a standalone entity, right? And so you have separate things within the creation, and then the whole of creation is separate and distinct from Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So, like all of these ideas are just totally the irrational. There's no. So I said to him, how do you know what's right and wrong? Like, what's right and wrong? Like if there was a whole nation of people like you, let's say you upon this philosophy, there was a whole nation of people like you, and let's say you lived somewhere in a land, right? And imagine, let's say the Chinese communists came and they said, right, these people, we're going to destroy them, we're going to kill all of you, and we're going to take your land, we're going to take your possessions. How and why would that be wrong? Why is that wrong? How would that be wrong? And on what basis can you say it's wrong? And he said, well, I can't say it's wrong because it's all subjective. Right and wrong is what's in my mind only. I said, well, there you go then. So like, how then are you going to live your life? Like where's the morals? Where's the law? Where's the law that you abide by that tells you this is right and this is wrong? This is objectively right. This is objectively wrong. How is this, And then he goes, oh, but then we know that, by your intuition, your intuition tells you that, yes. I said, yes, intuition, you can use it because Allah has put this in every person, irrespective of who he is. We have an instinctive knowledge of right or wrong, but that can be corrupted, right? And so a whole nation, say for example, the people of Lut, for example, the whole nation think it's okay to, sodomize boys or whatever it might be, and they all think it's perfectly fine. Or just like the Greeks would think it's perfectly fine to take a boy and to, raise him and have relations with him, right? Instinctively, they believe that to be correct. So you can't use the instinct on its own, like the intuition, and, the conscience on its own as a guarantee that something is right or wrong. You need something else to tell you that. Otherwise, all sorts of corruption can happen, right? So that's not a proof either. You can't live your life like that. And then I said, okay, name me the name of one man or one person or one philosopher who's saying what you're saying. He said, well, nobody really. I said, well, look, I can say to you that among all the people of the earth, everybody, when you say Abraham, everybody knows who Abraham is. Jews, Christian, Muslims, even everybody knows Moses, Jesus, Muhammad sallam, right? All of these prophets came with the message of Tawheed, of worshipping Allah alone, right? This is so when I tell you what I believe or what we as Muslims believe, I can tell you here is a history of people calling to this truth. Name me the name of the man before you or the name of a book before you. Where have you got this from? I said, well, I don't know. I can't name one. And he's just got the idea of spirituality. It's just we're just spiritual. Everything is, you just be spiritual and you meditate. And he said, I do meditation. I said, okay, so when you meditate, what's going through your mind? what actually goes through your mind? He goes, nothing. That's the whole point, is you do nothing, there's nothing in your mind, you just, meditate like this. So what's the purpose and benefit behind that then? So do you understand? Like, there's no, see here in this person, he's not coming from the angle of, physics has proven that all there is energy and matter, and it's not from a science physics point of view that you would see typically an atheist coming from that view, right? Like, you come across an atheist and he'll say, oh yeah, physics has now proven that basically the universe is eternal. All there is just matter, and it's, cosmic background radiation from 4 or 5 billion years ago. And, we know all that now, and that's all there is. He's not coming from the angle. It's from the angle of just spirituality and, meditating and, and he's just ignorant of science, The point being that what Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is discussing here, don't think this happened just like, 6, 7 centuries, 8 centuries ago, and this is something, gone and bygone. No, it's here right now in different forms, in different ways. And these people, what they do is really all they're doing is taking the atheism of the atheists, matter is eternal, and then taking some spirituality from over there, the Eastern places like Buddhism and whatever else it might be, and then just merging all of that together into some kind of, religion, new religion or something. And really, with these types of people, the real and true issue, all of this that we are discussing is not the real issue. The real issue is you just want to follow your desires, and you don't want to follow the halal and the haram because you just don't want restrictions in your life, right? That's what the real issue is underneath, right? You just want to be free, and you want to be. So then what you do, you find, okay, which way, which idea, which thoughts, which beliefs can I concoct to justify what I want to do, right? So then you'll go and then you'll basically come up with this idea of like, objective spirituality, or, everything is just the creator and the created in one, and, it's just meditation, and we connect to other things, and we are all this like nonsense which doesn't make any sense, right? So this is why this is a tremendous subject that Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is discussing here. And you can see that even Muslims, even righteous people, like some of these people weren't necessarily evil people, right? They were wanting to worship Allah, they were wanting to become close to Allah, but because of the lack of that deep knowledge and understanding of Tawheed and Al-Qadr and Ash-Shara', and making all these important distinctions, they were eventually led into misguidance, becoming confused, saying statements that they didn't realize that these are statements of disbelief, right? So this is a tremendous topic for us to be aware of, and these are not things that have bypassed and finished. You are always going to find people, you're going to come across people who are going to start speaking of the same, similar type of things. There might be Buddhists, there might be atheists, there might be, these things are present. Right? So for us to know these affairs and to be aware of these issues, they help us to understand the falsehood of the ideas which are being presented, but they might be presented in slightly different ways. It's not the same as what's here, but different terms and different words. And one of those is everything is just consciousness, right? You hear this from a lot of the New Age people, New Age spiritual people, right? All these people are doing is taking basically atheism, kufr, ilhad, and just repackaging it into like a new form, right? There's just one universal consciousness, and that is what is God. And that consciousness is in all of us, and we just need to, awaken it so that we can all unite. This type of speech, you're going to hear it from people out there. Well, this is kufr. This is outright disbelief, right? And these people are confused. They can't distinguish between the creator and the created. Right? So, inshallah, we'll stop on that note, and we'll continue the discussion, inshallah ta'ala, in the next lesson. So with that, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.